Hello and welcome to another video from salesberg.com.
In this video, we shall be looking at Bitfenix Ghost computer case. First impressions. Our review sample arrived in a very securely packed box. Inside the box, the case was protected using styrofoam packaging, so it should travel safe when we are ordering online and so forth. Once the case was outside the box, there were masking tapes to be seen at various locations. Now these are to protect various movable parts. There are quite a few of them, such as the front cover and top lid and the mesh grills and so forth. They can be quite easily removed. Hence it was a good idea from Bitfenix to have them additionally secured. Anyhow, the case was received nice and safe, so let's proceed with the review. So, a silent case from Bitfenix. Bitfenix is more commonly known for making gaming cases that are extremely good value for money, such as the Bitfenix Shinobi or Shinobi XL. Now with Ghost, Bitfenix is aiming towards the gaming crowd, but more so towards those who are looking for a silent case. Something very similar to Antec's P182 or perhaps Fractal Design Define XL-R2. However, it has its own characteristics and functionalities that will make it unique in its own ways, as we shall see in this video. So let's begin with the external appearance. Visually, it's very sober design. There is no flashing light or any design element that screams out too loudly. The exterior is more concerned with functionality, and that's a philosophy that I'm quite comfortable with. Once we open the front cover, we see various metal mesh. The mesh for the fan pops out quite easily, behind which there is a included 120mm fan. Another point to note, all of the metal mesh is filtered. Now the next interesting thing is the front cover door can open from either side. It's dual hinged. Now this hinge is locked in one direction out of the box, but this lock can be very easily opened, and then you can place the lock on the other side if you feel like it, or you can just leave it that way. You can open the door from either side. On the side panel there is sound dampening material. Bitfenix calls it Serenitech silencing material. It feels a bit like rubber, but they call it foam. Anyhow, it's present on either of the side panels and also at the back of the front cover. We shall see its effectiveness shortly. However, as far as technology is concerned, it is already different to that used in the previously mentioned two cases. Now the top panel from the left, there is the power LED and then hard drive activity LED, headphone connector, mic connector, two USB 2 ports, two USB 3 ports, power and reset button. Behind these there is a pop-up lid, inside which there is a hot swappable SATA terminal. Should you wish to use this chamber as a storage, you can. There is a cover for that, as we shall see later. Please note that you shouldn't travel while there is a hard drive connected to the hot swap port, as it might get damaged. And now the top ventilation area. The mesh removes very easily, just press and pop out. Now surprisingly, this top mesh is also filtered. Generally we have this as an exhaust, and I'm not entirely sure why they filtered this. Some may want to use this as an intake, but mostly using it as an exhaust, it will present some resistance. The Ghost presents a lot of room at the top area. There is also possibility to add lots of different types of fans. There is height clearance of about 3 centimeters. At the top there is no fan included by default. However, you can fit two 120mm fan or two 140mm fan or one 200mm fan, and you can fit a 230mm fan, except you'll have to get the right one. And by that I mean it has to be 2 centimeters or less thick. If it is more, the side panel won't fit. And it goes without saying that there is enough room for a 240mm radiator. At the back of the case there is the usual 120mm fan included. There is 7 expansion ports. There are 3 punch outs for liquid cooling tubes to pass through. However, they need to be pulled out first. There are 7 expansion ports, and on the right of that is grill for added ventilation, and all the side panels are attached using thumb screws. There's a Kensington lock attachment point, and the entire back surface is colored black. At the bottom there's the position for the power supply to be screwed in from the back. And now the bottom side. The casing stands on rubber footing, which should reduce some vibration. There is filter for the intake from the bottom, and this filter is attached using magnets, which makes it very easy to remove and replace. The filter covers the entire position of the intake, including the power supply and the additional fan. And now let's look at the inside. The painted black theme continues inside as well. There are 3 5 1/4 inch drive bays. There are 4 3.5 inch drive bays, and there are 3 2.5 inch drive bays. Now that can be extended, we shall see shortly. And the motherboard tray will mount up to a ATX motherboard. Quick point, the included fans are Bitfenix Spectra all black non-LED fans. They're both 120 millimeters. Now let's look at the included accessories. There are lots of hard drive trays included. Now the wider 3.5 inch hard drive trays can also mount SSDs, so we can practically mount up to 9 SSDs and 1 or 2 more on different locations as well. The trays are pretty much tool free. Just slide in the hard drive and slide in the tray with the hard drive, and the cabling would be routed from behind. There's also a user's manual included in the accessories pack. The user's manual is very well printed with lots of illustrations demonstrating various aspects of the case. That's the cover that goes on the hot swap bay port to protect it from getting damaged. There are rubber grommets included but not installed. They've included a lot of different types of screws. To install the front 120mm fan, the longer screws are to be used. And finally, there are some vibration dampening rubber stickers included that goes under the power supply to reduce the vibration from the power supply's fan. Now let's see how the hot swap bay protector works. Simply place it and lock it in. It stays there, and just unlock and pull it out in the reverse order, which is very simple yet effective. Now let's look at the motherboard tray a little closely one more time. Most of the screw attachment points are raised up, so motherboard standoff screws would not be necessary in most parts. There are 1 or 2 pre-installed. Now let's look at how the 2.5 inch bay drives can be converted into 3.5 inch bay drives. One of the sidewall of the cage is attached using 2 screws. We take out the 2 screws and the wall will slide out, and then we reposition the wall at the next position, and then we reattach the 2 screws, and this will give us a wider space, making it 3.5 inch drive bay. And now the front cables. The cables are colored in black and red, which does not really go with the theme properly, but nonetheless they are printed clearly, and the cables are sufficiently long to allow for cable management. All the other remaining cables are black. They're not sleeved as such. Now the USB 3 header also has a USB 2 bypass, just in case if the motherboard does not have a USB 3 header, we do not necessarily lose out the 2 USB 3 ports. And then there's the usual USB 2 and HD audio connectors. Furthermore, the SATA and the SATA power connector for the hot swap bay is also there, along with all the I/O cables. Now here's the interesting bit, the top panel. First we remove the top filtered mesh, and then there are 6 arrow locks that needs to be unlocked from underneath, and then the top panel can be removed. but it cannot be completely taken away because there are cables attached to the front I/O. So with all the space on the top, my first attempt was to install a 230mm fan. Coincidentally, I had a Bitfenix Spectra fan lying around, so I installed one of them, but with that installed, the top panel would not close, so I installed it from underneath, and in doing so, the top panel closes with enough room in there to install a radiator as well. Bitfenix Spectra 230mm fan has height of 30mm, which caused a bit of a problem, and that was that frame got in the way of the side panel. The side panel would not close. Turns out that that particular fan is completely incompatible with this case. That fan cannot be mounted anywhere else in this case. So the idea here is to find a 230mm fan which has a thickness of 20mm only, no more. So my next attempt was with a 200mm fan. It was a Thermaltake Thunderblade, and it wouldn't fit from the top again, but once mounted from the bottom, the side panel would fit perfectly. At the time of making this video, there is no information in Bitfenix website as to what the top clearance is. In fact, all of the Spectra series 230mm fan are 30mm wide. Anyhow, moving on. The back of the motherboard tray has a few locations for tying cable ties. The cutout for the motherboard's backplate is fairly large. Things start to look quite nice once the rubber grommets are installed, and all the edges are nicely rounded and they're not sharp, so that the cables aren't cut, and of course the person using it doesn't get hurt either. Now for cable management, we need some room at the back. There's only 2 centimeters clearance, which is not plenty given also the fact that the sound dampening material will take away another half a centimeters. Further difficulty was that the cable tie points were all located near the center of the motherboard's tray. If the cable tie points were spread out nice and evenly, then we could spread out the cables as well. Thus, with all the cables collecting in a bunch near the center and limited amount of space at the back of the motherboard tray, closing the lid was really a struggle. Not that it's impossible, just a difficulty we could do without. To install an optical drive, all we have to do is pop out one of the covers for the bay and then pull that little lever and slide the drive in. The lock catches the drive at the exact right position and nothing more needs to be done. It's installed. It can house up to maximum of 17 cm tall CPU coolers.
Okay, sound test with case side panel open. Need power. Okay, first sound test with the side panel open. All fans at full RPM. Sound test 2 with the side panel closed.
Let's see now. There are hundreds of things to say at this point, but if I was allowed only one word to express it all, that word would be satisfactory. At the start of the video, I did show 2 other cases that fit in the similar job role. Both of them are more costly, hence making this ghost a higher bang for buck item. With the side panels on, the sound was indeed muffled enough, and the test system did have all the optional fans installed. On top of that, there was a dual fan CPU cooler, a RAM cooler, dual fan graphics card, and still it was nice enough to the ear. I have no qualms about the build quality either. Bitfenix calls it nanochrome, or others may call it metallic paint effect. Either ways, it's doing its job well. The case looks very nice, and all the other aspects of the construction was equally neat. Yes, there were slight measurement issues with the top 230mm fan and the space behind the motherboard tray. About the fan, Now that you do know, simply grab a slimmer one and the side panels will close if the mounted fan is 20mm or less thick. And the panel at the other side, it's a bit of a struggle, but once it's shut, it's done, forgotten sooner than later. The picture will be incomplete if I don't talk about the price. The expected RRP is at about $130 Australian. That in its category makes it a very competitive player. If you wish to make a gaming system, you can. It has all the provisions to make a good enough gaming system. Or if you are in need of a case in order to make a sound optimized system, again, this is worthy of consideration. Whatever the use case may be, on its own, if we look at this as a case in general compared to most other cases of its size, there is little missing. Cleaning the case would be easy as the filters just pops out in your hand effortlessly and installs back the same way. There is room inside for sufficient number of components to make almost anyone happy. Plus it comes with a hard drive docking bay as an added bonus. Perhaps one of the best things that I like about this case is the way it looks. It's very simple. It is not a show pony. And that's a good thing. Initially I was thinking that it's too simple. But as I kept on working with it, it grew on me. Function has always had a priority for me over looks. So when something is simple, I like it. Especially given the fact that simplicity is actually harder to achieve. But when done right, it's awesome. There is one thing that has been in my mind, that is that the USB ports and switches are on the top. Not everyone will have their system on the floor, and those who would be placing this on the desk, inserting and removing a USB stick will require the person to stand up. This is a fairly tall case after all. Anyhow, having seen everything and said everything, the final thoughts are that this case does a lot, it offers a lot, and it competes with a lot. Kinda like a hero from a movie where everything is stacked against him, the underdog, yet saves the day and gets the girl. That may not be a great example, but as far as getting my vote goes, it's got my thumbs up, that's for sure.
Thank you for watching the video. I hope you've enjoyed it. Your comments and suggestions are most welcome. Please subscribe in order to stay updated with our latest videos. Bye for now.